Well, I carry open. Because I'm a police officer, I guess I get paid to get shot first. Wow. You know, I was sitting over there thinking about that, and I was thinking, damn, I bet he James Jobs or something like that. I think what I'm going to offer you here real quick is a question I get quite often is when a police officer pulls you over, and maybe some of you are wondering this, what do I divulge as far as if I'm carrying concealed, if I have my handgun in my vehicle? Anybody have any opinions on that? What would you do if I stopped you and you're carrying your handgun?
Tell them up front.
Come up front. I'm sorry, sir?
I would let them know.
Okay.
I would let them know.
And I'm a permit with my license.
And permit?
I wouldn't divulge.
Okay.
When I was pulled over for speeding, the officer didn't give me time. He's like, license, registration. He was back 3 minutes later. He was running the radar again. I didn't have time to tell him my.
Or he's going home.
No, he was.
He was like, man, I'm getting the heck off of work. I understand. I understand. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I probably wouldn't tell him.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
I got a question.
Sure.
I've done some shooting with a county officer, and he said that when that officer approaches your car, he will know whether or not you have a carry permit. Is that true?
The state police is getting more and more electronic. Some cars, they can call the state police during business hours and find out.
Okay.
That's how they know. They're getting to the point it's automated, but if you're carrying in a reciprocal state, the statistical probability they will know is down. So the trade-off to that, though, is other than calling the state police, is if you don't have it with you, but you really have a license and you have a gun, it happens to be on a weekend where you've got a probable cause to arrest you because you committing a misdemeanor by carrying a handgun without a license. So that's the trade-off to it too.
Is that on IADEX now on the Indiana database off of our
It may
27?
be.
Yeah. I'm starting to think we can request that.
Yeah.
A little new there, but I think
It's
correct.
always changing. You eventually get to the point where there aren't the gaps in it there are now.
They're adding is the database is mixed with the local systems. For example, like protective orders were added, and now we can hear protective orders if you have a protective order against you or vice versa. So that's probably correct. Go forward with the example. Good question. You can have a question. You're facilitator.
There's an attorney, Kurt Freeman, in Lafayette,
Sure.
who very, very strongly says do not say so. And he presents some valid reasons for it. As in, somebody will say, well, let me have it, start clearing it, and then you run an ND possibility, that type of thing, or just go nuts. And there's even if it's plainly visible, unless they say something, do not. So there are some very strong opinions on both sides of that issue. In the state of Ohio, you must announce it. In the state of Indiana, you're not
Right. Yeah, you don't have to. Absolutely. I would after 17 years, I'd look at it like this. If I approach your car and I can see the gun, I'm going to see the gun when I come up to the side of that doorpost. There's going to be some anxiety on both sides. Does that make sense? I'm going to be anxious. I want to know, why is the gun there? That's not a bad idea then. Hey, I'm sorry, I have a weapon right here. Just keep your hands visible. No, I joke a little bit when I make traffic stops to lighten the mood. So the guy will be like, well, I'm going to reach in my glove box. Are you okay with that? Well, you're going to blast me. Yeah, we're all good here today. So, I don't know what you got in there. If it's like a Tasmanian devil or something like that, we'll be all right. So my advice is if it's somewhere to where you're going to reach in a glove box and I'm going to see a weapon, think about it. Think about your own safety. You got to understand what's going through my mind's eye. I don't come across citizens all the time that are forthright, that are kind. What are my calls? I'm not going to somebody's house and say, hey, would you like to sit down and have some dinner? We'd like to talk to you about what happened in church this past Sunday. No, they're beating the pus out of each other and they're biting me, and I got one on my back and one on my arm, and now I'm the focus of attention of violence. So when I come up to the car, if I were to see that and you open up your glove box, right away it's going to cause me to be, well, why didn't you let me know that? Now, let's say you have it tucked in your waistband, it's not going to be an issue, you pull out your license, why tell me? I don't need to know. You're not going to have to tell me that. Does that make sense? And is that a rule per se? No, I'm just trying to give you a perspective from a law enforcement officer. We go through what's going through our minds. Now, Bob brings up a good point. There are some officers, I'm going to tell you, they're going to disassemble your gun. Don't know why. But yes, here's my permit. Okay, I see your weapon. They'll run your weapon, you'll come back and be like in 50 pieces. And you're like, well, how do I assemble this back? And their concern is that now that you've given them your permit and all your information, you're going to jack around in them, which is highly unlikely, or else you wouldn't have given it to them in the first place. But that does happen. That's a good point. I've seen that done, and they've totally unloaded the weapon. Usually we do run the weapons. Do you think there are people that will offer us that information that maybe don't have a handgun carry permit, or maybe they don't have a proper purchase? Actually, they do. It's like this reverse psychology. I run into it all the time. Actually, I read Mr. I'm sorry, sir.
Brian. Brian.
I read Brian's card. He handed out this card.
Mr. He's the old guy in the back.
If you read Brian's card, and this is brilliant. This is a good card, I have to admit. Request an attorney to remain silent. Give no search consents. And that's brilliant. We go off of that all the time. You'd be amazed at how many people come up and say, hey, after the traffic stop, obviously. After the traffic stop, I'll say, listen, is it okay if I search your car? For some reason, I feel that there's something wrong with this vehicle, or I've smelled marijuana or something of that nature. And, well, sure, go ahead, search it, I don't care. It's kind of reverse psychology. I'm saying, oh, well, crap. You say, go ahead. Screw it, I'm done, I'm going home. And I'll find like a pound of weed. And I get done and I'm cuffing the guy. He's not personal with me. It's just an arrest. I'll be like, why would you tell me to search your car? Well, I think you'd really do it. Have you ever seen that? That's a true story. You go in, and the judge is sitting there. He's reading my case report going, what the heck is wrong with this? But anyway. And the same can hold true with a weapon. The guy's going, yeah, I got handcuffed. He's basically lying. So we'll take it, even though they may have a permit, the permit may have been canceled, blah, blah, blah. The weapon may be stolen. So we do run those things just to check them. Do you have any questions? He's out.
I got a question.
Yes.
As far as running the gun, if you don't have any, the guy says, yeah, I have a permit, but he doesn't say, yeah, go ahead and run my gun. Is that considered a search when you take the gun back to the car and to run it and see if it's stolen? Is that, to me, that's like a search of your background. Is that legal if they don't consent to have that done?
I believe so.
How does that come?
We can run the weapon.
Yeah, if you volunteer, if you volunteered it and given it to them, if you've gone that far, they can run it. When you get into the Fourth Amendment, though, it is so hyper technical. Whether it is an on-the-road stop and governed by Terry versus Ohio, which is reasonable suspicion versus a search warrant or exigent circumstances, it's a really hyper-technical issue. The way to handle it simply is not be a criminal, but on top of that, if you're not a criminal, then let the officer know they can do whatever they're lawfully authorized to do. That's fine, but you're not giving consent beyond that.
Just off the weapon, if you're giving me the permit, you're giving me the weapon, that's just part of that investigative stop.
But let's hold one more question so we can do some of this after lunch.
Absolutely. In fact,
I think what a lot of people are wondering is, from a legal standpoint, do they have to comply if an officer requests them to relinquish the weapon? You're on a traffic stop.
Yes.
You say, I have my permit and I have my Glock on my side. The officer, for his safety, wants to secure your weapon. Does the driver have the legal right to refuse to give the officer the weapon?
No.
Okay.
Where I have an issue with it, and I've talked to, is some officers, it may not be a standard operating procedure, unloading it though and taking the part on the roadside and I hope this is an idiotic thing. Either the police officer is going to have an issue, or somebody, once the stop's over, is going to jack one off through the floor of the car. So I think that's the wrong. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. They give you a Ziploc bag.
No, I just asked you not to shoot me.
On that one, I just I'm going to interject here. On October 11th of last year, and some of you have heard the story, at Parkview Hospital in Randalia, there was a bail bondsman, according to the story, who was causing some kind of a disturbance. And the cops were called and escorting him out. And they're up on the 7th floor by a service elevator, and I guess they asked him to unload his gun. So he did. He cranked around into the floor, which ricocheted off the floor, right past the charge nurse's office, and then hit the door jamb of an occupied patient's room right at head height. Okay. Right across the hall from my wife's office. on the 7th floor. I mean, stupid, folks. If you're going to disarm him, you throw him out and you cuff him up and you take it off him, right? Otherwise, if I see you touch that thing, I will shoot you. So until you get to the car, you're off the property. Don't even put your hands on that thing. Just stupid stuff like that. And we all know that some cops are very good with guns and some aren't.
That's true. There's a learning curve even in policing different levels.
Yeah. So, I have your gun and then start sweeping with you. How do I reckon? Geez, leave it alone if you can. All right, I'm done with that, Bob. You're up. The whole panel, you can jump in.